Hey there, Pisces. This is your ascendant forecast for the week ahead, starting on Monday, the 10th of November, taking you right the way through to Sunday, the 16th, November 2025. And yeah, this is, I think, a calmer week to the one that we had last week. I think this is one with a lot more reflection. But even though it's calmer, I think it's one that we can do a lot more with. You know, we're not being buffeted around so much by these planetary winds, these planetary storms. So like last week, we had Mars going into Sagittarius, the full moon in Taurus, Venus going into Scorpio. We also had Uranus, you know, one of your ruling planets, retrograding back into Taurus. And then today, Mercury went or is going retrograde. So, you know, as we start this new week, we're starting with a much calmer, a calmer feel. And it's like the groundwork has already been laid. So this week, the only real thing that's standing out to me that I want to sort of share is about the Mercury conjunct Mars. You know, that conjunction is strong, it's dynamic, it's in the sign of Sagittarius, and Mercury's retrograde in it, which makes it a bit more unusual. What's also unusual is the fact that we've got 3 in this series. The first one, when both of them were direct, was in the sign of Scorpio on the 20th of October. Then we got this one in Sagittarius, when Mercury's retrograde. And then we're going to have another one in Capricorn in January, almost 3 days to the start of it, where they're both going direct again. So it's like these 3 Mercury Mars conjunctions from Scorpio to Sagittarius to Capricorn. And, you know, if you've been here before, you know I like a good investigation. You know I like a good story into patterns. And so this one caught my attention. I thought, right, this is the theme of this week's show. So let's see what's coming up. If you're new here, by the way, my name's Louisa and welcome. And I'm going to start this, as I do always, just by saying a big thank you to people that sponsor my channel and also help me to do what I do. So thank you very much. So these are the 2 charts. This is the first one, and you'll see at the start of this week, Mercury's just gone retrograde. You can just see a tiny little, can you see that? A tiny little R to the bottom right-hand side of the symbol for Mercury. And Mars is really close by. They're already in a conjunction, and they're at the top of your chart in your 10th house. Did I say, forgive me, Mercury, I think, is like right now going retrograde. I just had an awful thought there that I said your ruling planet was Uranus. If I did, please forgive me. I know Jupiter and Neptune are your ruling planets. But anyway, so they're right at the top of your chart. And by the end of this forecast period, you'll see that there's some space between them, and Mars is now ahead. You know, they've changed positions because they're going the other way to each other. Now, if we have a look at where the moon starts with this, it starts just at the tail end of Cancer, then it's going into Leo, Virgo, and Libra. And so as we come to the end of this week, you'll see the moon has gone from here to here. So this is, I think, a particularly action-oriented part of the chart, you know, where there's a lot going on. You'll be very, very busy from the 10th to the 12th, getting things organized in your life. And then, you know, the 12th to the 15th, there's a lot going on between you and your partners. So this is going to be a very, very sort of interactive time. Now, when I think about this conjunction between Mercury and Mars, like Mars is thrusting, he takes action. You know, once he sets his sight on something, he's got determination and dedication to really do it. Maybe dedication is a little bit more Saturnian, but, you know, Mars will, you know, kind of clamp it between his jaws and he'll run with it. You know, he's, you know, he will just get on and do things. He's a real doer. And in the sign of Sagittarius, he feels like he's got his psychic, philosophical journey as a momentum. You know, the journey and the story that he's got will propel him forwards. And so, you know, it's very, very confident. You know, whatever story he's got about himself, in particular about your legacy, your mission, your purpose, whatever it is, because the 10th house is all about how you rise up in your life. And so whatever underlying story he's holding on about you, you'll be running with it, you know, in quite a strong way. But Mercury, when he comes up here, and by the way, Mercury's not very strong in the sign of Sagittarius. In fact, Mercury's quite weak in the sign of Sagittarius, because Sagittarius as a sign is very contextual. It's not black and white. It's about a story, and that story can take some really big twists and turns and completely go round in circles, which, really goes against, the way that Gemini and Virgo think about it. And, Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo. So he's out of his depth here. Mercury is going to have to be a lot more content with these big twists and turns and stories, and the value that people put on stories. So these two coming together, it's a really potent time where your stories are creating action. And because Mercury's retrograde, there's some caution, because in the retrograde, things from the past come up and reemerge. We're also internalizing all our stories. We're not necessarily telling the whole world about them, but there's a rewriting of these stories. So, whilst Mars is like charging into the future, which is a very Sagittarian concept, Mercury retrograde is saying, whoa, hang on a sec. Let's get our story straight. Let's make sure we're, on track. And so there could be some real tension between acting too fast and then needing to deal with the consequences. So yeah, there's bold thinking and spiritual courage and this kind of philosophical feeling of I'm on the right path. You cannot put me off my path. It's very bold, but there's also the need for a revision. And so with this, the 10th house is also about the career. I think, you're going to be reviewing your calling or your mission or your legacy and really asking yourself, what's my purpose? And, where have my stories brought me so far in my purpose? You'll be feeling compelled to speak boldly in public. And if you do have any big speeches this week, great. Mercury and Mars here will be very, very helpful. However, you might want to really practice your message and make sure that you really are on the right track, because you might need to edit some things. With this Mercury retrograde, you want to make sure that if you're talking publicly, and the 10th house is highly public, you want to make sure you get everything right. And if you don't get everything right, then you need to be aware that you need to have something up your sleeve about how you get it right seamlessly, gracefully, without damaging your public persona. And, another thing I would also advise is, you might be editing your legacy or your mission. You might be editing and rewriting your direction that you're going in, but don't burn your bridges, because once Mercury turns around, and he will turn around on the 29th of November, he's going to go direct again. You might need to pick up those bridges. So don't completely burn them. Don't burn them to the ground, which is very much what Mars in Sagittarius wants to do. Also, given that I'm being a bit cautious, let's also not forget that Uranus is in opposition to both Mars and Mercury right now at the start of the week. Mars and Uranus were exactly in opposition at the time of the full moon. So just cast your mind back to the time of this supermoon with this opposition. What was going on for you? Did you kick up a big fuss about anything? Was there a big to-do somewhere in your life? Because, where this is for you, or was for you, because at that time Uranus was here in your 4th house, you might have found that there was, a bit of a disagreement, a bit of a setback because of extra information coming up. Mars and Uranus in opposition can be quite violent, quite aggressive, quite surprising. It bursts out of nowhere. And so there's a lot of this bursting energy, and it can be quite destructive. And, we've got this ongoing Mercury and Uranus opposition, which, by the way, if you haven't already seen and you're interested in, I've got an actual video dedicated just to Mercury and Uranus in opposition. So it's worth checking out. But these two in opposition, I think, are really showing that whatever you're learning about your mission right now, the temptation to raise everything that came before it to the ground is really strong. It's like you're erasing something from history. But again, I would really advise that you don't do that just yet. Just hold on to things. Just recognize that was then, this is now. And the reason I say that is because, um, the first of these conjunctions happened on the 20th of October in your ninth house. And so this was you setting yourself a bold new direction, a series that it feels like there's a whole load of new information that you're party to, you're privy to, and you feel fired up. You're learning. There's a much bigger context. It's like everything you knew about your life, you're realizing maybe wasn't quite honest or really relevant. I think you really notice the change in you. And of course, now you're wanting to apply it because you've gone through this expanded change. You're now thinking, okay, well, now where do I go? What's going on in my career? How does this fit in with my life plan? I've expanded. Now I need to expand my career to match it. And so, of course, you might want to erase the past. However, by the time the next conjunction comes along, which is on the 18th of January, it's going to be in your 11th house where you're collaborating with other people. And it's also going to be in a trine with Uranus. So if Uranus is representing that thing that you want to erase yourself from, it won't be there. It won't be around to collaborate with in January. So I guess what I'm saying is, whatever you feel a bit uneasy about, don't get rid of it, because it could be very, very relevant come January. And in fact, it could help you move fast, really move fast and forward very quickly in January. So hold on to things and deal with it, So I do think you've expanded your vision. You're now expanding your career, and that is going to expand into collaboration in a whole new way and put you on a whole new path. So I do think these conjunctions are very, very important to you. So let's have a look at this last part, which is fitting it back into this week. So at the start of this week, the moon is just in the tail end of Cancer and then is going into the sign of Leo. This is in the sixth house. This is about your day-to-day and how you manage your energies, how you manage your health, how you manage your money, how you manage your work. And it's very, in many respects, it's very immutable. Like you've got deadlines, you've got your routine, you've got your habits. And so it's very much attending to your habits, but they're working in flow really nicely. The moon is going to be in a lovely trine with Mars and also in a lovely trine with Mercury. So it feels like you can take the right action at the right time. And it feels like everything is fitting in a beautiful way. It feels very, very positive. So the 10th through to the 11th is very helpful. By the time we get to Wednesday, the 12th, the moon is going into the sign of Virgo, and we're going to get shortly after an exact square to the exact conjunction of Mercury and Mars. And this is a pivotal moment because it feels like your support that usually comes from the people that you're close to in life, it's tense. Maybe, what you're creating for yourself, your new vision is so big, they don't feel like they fit in anymore. And it just feels like there's some tension to work out, and so it's important to just be aware of that. How can you move forwards without alienating the people around you that really matter? However, the 13th and 14th, as the moon is moving out of this position, you'll feel much better, and it will feel like you're able to bring them back on board or listen to them and see what's going on. So I think that would be helpful. So if you do have to boldly talk in public, if you're feeling compelled to speak about your new vision, I probably wouldn't do it until later on in the week when you're feeling a lot more powerful and a lot more in alignment with the support around you. So I would probably wait until, the 13th, 14th. And then as we come into the 15th and 16th, that's Saturday and Sunday, the moon's going to be in the 8th house. There'll be a lot of focus on shared resources, how you can leverage some of the shared wealth or shared belongings between you and the people close to you that might help you in your journey. You might also get to have much deeper conversations with people where you're coming into a much deeper trust and trusting yourself a lot more, which I think is helpful. The 8th house here, where the moon's going to be, is also a place where we're going through inner transformation and also taking ourselves on a rite of passage. So if there's been almost a barrier that you've always felt like you get this far and then you can't move beyond it, on Saturday, as the moon comes into Libra, the moon is going to make a sextile to Mercury retrograde and then one to Mars. It's like the new agreed action, as in communication and ideas in your mind, is going to catalyze. It's going to start moving forward. So I really think you're about to take a leap forwards, which I think will be really great. So there are some of my thoughts for the week ahead, and also how it fits into the context from October right the way through on that 3-month journey to the 18th of January. I hope that's helpful. If you want to go deeper into this with me in a personal look at your chart, then just get in touch. All of my details are below in the video description and also on my channel page. I've also got a membership where I do even more detailed looks at the planetary picture on a daily basis, Monday to Friday, and also I do love and money forecasts for all 12 signs as well. So there's a lot of support out there if you need it. Anyway, have a great one, have a wonderful week, and hopefully we'll connect again in the near future. Lots of love to you. Bye for now.